We're going to start in just one moment. Good evening to everyone. Welcome to BJ, those who are part of our community, welcome home. Those who are not part of our community, welcome home. I hope you can feel here at home. By way of introduction, I'm Rolly Matalon. I'm one of the rabbis here at BJ. I know that as I was greeting people and saying hello and walking around, I know many people here have been to Israel in the last couple of months. I myself was there with my colleague, Rabbi Felicia Sol, and a number of people from our community, and many of you are here tonight who were part of that group. And all who've been there have experienced the profound sort of heartbreak, the sadness, the pain, the sense of total dislocation, of fear. And we haven't been to the other side, but in the other side is also total dislocation and disaster and fear and violence. And it's a very dark time. And in this very dark time, there's no light and there's no vision. And nobody's talking about the day after. Nobody wants to. Very few people are talking about the day after. But one thing is sure, there will be a day after. Hopefully sooner rather than later. There will be a day after. And when this day after comes, there has to be some path forward for these two peoples to remain, because nobody's going anywhere. One wants to kick the other one out, and the other one wants to kick this one out. Nobody's going anywhere. They're both staying, and they're both going to live in this land, and somehow there has to be some path forward. And so I'm very honored to be with people who have been thinking about this for a while and have been committed, even against all the pushback and all the difficulties. They have remained committed and focused on what will be possible for these two people to imagine to live together in this land. And so here's going to hear tonight about this two states configuration, a little different than the traditional one what we've been used to. I've been honored to be part of Americans for Land for All for a number of years as a supporter and part of a group of people who are trying to promote and to display and disseminate this idea so that people here can think about it and raise questions and think, and that's what we're here for tonight. So I just want to acknowledge, May and Rula, who have been doing this work, and Libby, really thank you for being here. You traveled from far, you traveled from closer. And also to acknowledge the presence of our congressman, Jerry Nadler, who's always been really right on, and we have a lot of gratitude for all your work and all your commitment and your public service. And Jerry is a member of BJ, so he's very much at home together with his wife Joyce. So just an introduction to Libby. Libby will be moderating, Libby Leginsky will be moderating the conversation, and then there will be some time for Q&A. Libby is the Vice President for Public Engagement at the New Israel Fund, so I forgot to say we're doing this also together in partnership with the New Israel Fund. Many, many times we've done things, and it's always great to be together in partnership with the New Israel Fund. Libby leads all aspects of NIF's public efforts in the United States, including communications, digital programs, events, leadership, community partnerships, and engagement. And new generations, and the fellowships, and so a lot of things. But prior to joining NIF, Libby lived and worked in the Israeli not-profit field for almost a decade. There she worked as Director of International Relations for the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, and as a strategy consultant for human rights organizations like Yesh Din, Physicians for Human Rights, and for documentary films including Budrus and The Law in These Parts, new media initiatives like 972 magazine, and for progressive campaigns. She's a founding member of Zazim Community Action and The Whistle. Currently, she serves on the executive committee of the Interagency Task Force for Arab-Israeli Issues and is a New York co-chair for the Reboot Network. She's based in Brooklyn and travels to Israel and Palestine frequently, and we're happy to have her. She was moderating the wonderful conversation with Standing Together, Omdim Beyachad, back in October, just a couple of weeks after October 7th, and we're glad to have her back. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Next time I'm sending you half that bio. But thank you for the warm introduction. Thank you also to the team here at B'nai Jeshurun. As Rabbi Roli said, New Israel Fund and BJ partner frequently on programs, and it really does feel like a home base for us. So it's very nice to be back here together, even in these dark times, maybe especially in these dark times, to be together. I'm going to introduce our speakers and get us started with some questions, and then we'll open it up for conversation. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. Dr. Rula Hardal, to my far right, is the co-executive director of A Land for All. Rula is a research fellow at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, the Jerusalem Van Leer Institute, and the Forum for Regional Thinking. She has taught political science and social work at Al-Quds University in East Jerusalem, the Arab American University in Ramallah, University of Osaka in Japan, and University of Lisbon in Portugal. Take me with you. Dr. Hardal is an activist in several initiatives to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and is a board member of Adalah, the legal center for Arab minority rights in Israel based in Haifa. She also serves as a political commentator on local and international television channels. Welcome, Rula. To my right is May Pundak. May is the co-executive director of A Land for All, a feminist lawyer, activist, and social entrepreneur. May has worked at the New Israel Fund. She's been the director of Polyphony Foundation, helped establish a legal team to support political struggles in East Jerusalem, and co-founded an educational dialogue group for Jewish and Palestinian teenagers in West and East Jerusalem. May is a graduate of the Mandel School of Educational Leadership and a graduate of Harvard University's Leadership Community Organizing and Activism course. Me too, taught by Papa Marshall Gantz, right? She holds a degree in public and international law with an emphasis on human rights from Hebrew University of Jerusalem. A Land for All, which we're going to talk about tonight, brings together Israelis and Palestinians who recognize what Rabbi Roli just said, that two peoples share deep connection to the same exact homeland, and that only a partnership-based approach can create a better future for all. Their movement's creative two states, one homeland plan has been featured recently on CNN, in the New York Times, and elsewhere. So with these illustrious bios, I now just want to ask you to bring us into the conversation with what brought you to this work. Why are you engaged in this never-ending work to end the conflict? Rula, would you like to start?
I hope so, yeah. I was telling May before we started that it looks like a church. And we were wondering, use this place to be a church or one time? I don't know. Anyway, I like it. So, yeah, and I feel home. I've been spending during the last 2 weeks a lot of time in synagogues than I spent in any church. Actually, I didn't visit any church in the States, but it's okay. I will visit some when we go back to Palestine. I'm doing this because I decided to stay in Israel-Palestine, and I do care. And after October 7th and the beginning of the war in Gaza, I decided to be more involved in Land for All. I gave up big part of my academic engagement and work, and I decided to get this position. It's a full-time position, to be the Palestinian co-executive director. Because of two reasons. Because when it started, and I do still there, and I don't imagine that it's more than 4 months after that, and we didn't even started to speak about going out from this situation. So the first reason is actually my existential fear that I still have until now, since October 7th, and the acknowledgement that this time is different. Different from any previous round of escalation of the violence between the Palestinians and the Israelis that we witnessed during the last 2 decades. And to be honest, I was born and raised up in the northern part of Israel, the very far north, and I live since a couple of years in Ramallah. And during the first, I think, 2 months after October 7th, I prepared a small suitcase. I put it in my car. I took my 2 passports, my important documents, my academic certificates, my apartment paper, and put all of them in my car. I was moving around in Israel-Palestine in this fear that in every moment it could be that I won't be able to enter Ramallah or to be in my apartment, or maybe I have to leave abroad. And this existential fear brought me to the decision to deepen in my engagement in Land for All. I was involved in Land for All since 2.5 years, but this time is different. I decided to be much more engaged because of this existential fear, and not able to imagine that we are entering now another phase where this phase of escalation and violence could last for another many years and shape our lives. Just thinking about that make me unable to breathe. And that's why I'm doing this. And the second reason, that despite the whole catastrophic situation, I do see the opportunity. I do see the opportunity that people started again to take the issue seriously after neglecting the whole situation in Israel, in Palestine, in terms of the political parties and the political public discussions in Israel and here and overall in the world. People stopped speaking about the occupation and about the Palestinian people and about what's going on even inside Israel. So we see this even small opportunity, and we are trying to expand this opportunity to do something here, but mainly in Israel-Palestine, in order to go out from this situation. And I would like to say another maybe two sentences about the term the day after. You know, it's a horrible term, and we are speaking about the day after since 4 months, and we don't see how this day after is going to look like and when. And the second point, in order to have a day after, we need today to do something, and yesterday, and before 4 months, all of us. And if not all of us, we, the people who live there every day and who decided to continue living there, we don't have the luxury to wait until this day after is going to come. We are trying to create this day after.
Thank you. Mai, how about you? Yeah. What brings you into this today?
This is the last day of our visit to the U.S. We've been here for 2 weeks, very, very, very long 2 weeks, and I'll start by saying thank you to Rabbi Roli and for BJ for feeling like a home to be in. We've been feeling very uprooted in the past couple of weeks, being so far away from home. We are here because, as Rula said, we believe that there is an opportunity in this crisis, and we are feeling the urgency, and I'll say a few words about that in a moment. But it's been very difficult not to be home. And I think it's important because I know we're all feeling it, and we will get to share with you, I hope, some of the work that we're doing that is meaningful and hopeful. But I think it's important to also recognize how bad the reality is, and how broken we all are, and devastated and traumatized and scared, and all of us, all of us. In Israel and in Palestine, I can assume that most of us in this room as well, and I want to start by that because I think it's important to sit with what's in front of us, and I think that acknowledging that for us, and this is Rula said it kind of in between the lines, right? Rula joined this organization as a director after October 7th, which is a very brave thing to do. And what we're here to tell you about is how we have found, from very different stories and histories, both collective and personal stories, that the way out has to be done together. It has to be with integrity and with honesty and with being very sincere about the fear and the needs of each of us. And I think that it's a good, and maybe I'll say a few words about why I'm doing this work, but I'm doing this work for my kids, okay? I'm doing this work for my kids. I'm doing it because I have one home, which is Israel, and no one is going anywhere. And that's an important starting point. No one is going anywhere. And if we don't understand that there is a historic moment in front of us right now, after so many years of at least political stagnation, and something has moved and changed in the most tragic way, we might miss this opportunity. And so what we're here to advocate, and the reason why we are here is to share with you our work that, and I'll say maybe, okay, I'll before I start saying what that is, I'll just say that I grew up in Tel Aviv, so it's also foreign for me to be in synagogues. And I grew up in a very committed family to peace. I grew up knowing that my future and my safety and my independence and my freedom depends on Palestinian safety and freedom and independence. So I come from a long legacy of traitors, if you will. And
in this room, we call them visionaries.
I'll take that. That was clear to me. That was clear to me, and that's a great privilege that I've had growing up with that. Because for most Israelis and Palestinians, as we know, the assumption is a zero-sum game. The assumption is either or. The assumption is a very binary way of thinking. And I had the real gift of not growing into that. And yet still I grew up with a very, like a lot of us, with a huge commitment to the classic two-state solution, assuming that that's the only way out, which I think it was for a long time. But at a certain point, and I'll just for a couple of, moments to take you to the moment where I got involved in this work, it was 2019. I was living in the States. And I moved back to Israel after a few years here with a 1-year-old baby. And I came back to Israel. It was cycles of elections. Do you remember that we used to have elections in Israel? And none of the leaders and the parties were talking about political vision. None. None were articulating a vision or a future or horizon or something to even connect to imagining that we can get out of this. It has become a non-issue. It is insane to think about it. And I think, if anything, October 7th teaches us is that this conflict cannot be managed or shrunk or normalized, or that there is no status quo. That does not exist. But we've been lacking vision and hope for a very, very, very long time. And just even connecting us to, you've probably all aware of the 9 months prior to October 7th that we've been fighting for democracy in Israel. But we have been fighting against some things. We've been articulating what we're fighting against, but we have not been articulating what we're fighting for. We have not given hope. We have not been able to organize a camp that actually chooses something except for not Bibi. And at that moment when I came back home and no one was talking about the future of my kids and literally thinking that we don't have to solve this conflict. We can just put Palestinians behind a wall as if that will give us safety. Well, guess what? And that we can just forget about them and that they won't impact our lives. We just forget about them, put them behind a wall, siege, create an ex-territory and forget about it. Well, that's not the case. And for me, I felt that the two-state solution is slipping between my fingers, and I was devastated and broken. And then I heard about this group of people who are sitting together, Israelis and Palestinians, thinking outside of the box, thinking about what reality tells us, learning from other conflicts, and co-creating an updated version for the two-state solution that might actually work. And I was just blown away. I just felt blown away, as if someone, I was so stuck in this binary of like, there's two-state solution, that's not gonna work. There's one-state solution, that's not gonna work. So there's nothing we can do. So let's just sit and do nothing and be sad about it. And then I found two states, one homeland, and yeah.
Thank you. And I think for many of us, and I've heard this so much in recent months, just having a situation in which Israelis and Palestinians are on a stage together, working on something together, already feels like a lot, because things feel very polarized, very retreated. But a land for all and two states, one homeland is much more than just Israelis and Palestinians doing something together. So you felt the two-state solution going through your finger, like slipping through your fingers. What is a land for all? I mean, what is the offering? If it's not the traditional two-state solution, then what is it?
Okay. Before we are trying to keep a little bit suspense, So before we are telling you about the accurate, practical, political vision, I would like to start describing the values and the principles that we agree about, or we consider them to be important and fundamental when we speak about going out from this situation and resolving and changing the relationship between the Israelis and the Palestinians, regardless of any kind of political vision. We do advocate for our political vision, but these principles and values are important. And before I start with the principles and values, it's important to say that it's not only that we are Palestinians and Israelis that are able at these days to keep talking to each other and working with each other. I will tell you also why we are special. Okay, we start from that. We are special because we are honest and brave enough to articulate and to understand the history and the reality of the relationship between the Zionist movement and the Palestinian people, the Palestinian national movement, during the last 100 years in a very honest, brave way. And accordingly, we have already a paradigm shift in conceptualizing the whole conflict and the whole situation that has been emerged and developed on the ground since the establishment of the State of Israel. We do agree between each other that this is a struggle between two national movements, not only, but mainly, where one of these two national movements has the self-determination, a sovereign state, which is Israel, the Israeli Jews, while the other group still denied from the Israelis and from the whole world its most basic right for self-determination. And not only, they live under Israeli control. If you want, we live in a bi-national reality. We have two national groups between the river and the sea, but in one construction. I'm not saying one state, because we do have one construction, one legal political construction, not one state, where we have only one regime who controls the land and the people and the resources and everything between the river and the sea. which is the Israeli regime. Having said all of that, which is very important in order to start tackling the problem, and despite this very deep, difficult understanding, we are able as Palestinians and Israelis to do this work together, and we have been growing and expanding since October 7th. During the second half of 2023, we even moved as an organization to a shared organizational form and shared board of 7 Palestinians and 7 Israeli Jews. We are a joint cross-border organization, and you know what? Our first joint board meeting of Israelis and Palestinians after moving to this new shared organizational form was on October 10th. And since then, we still meet and do this work. Because we have agreed values and principles. And these are 5 principles. I will try to tell you about them very short. The first one, a mutual right of both people, Israeli Jews and Palestinians, to claim belonging to the same homeland. We acknowledge that both people, the Israeli Jews and the Palestinian people, have the same claims for Palestine and Eretz Israel as their homeland. People are attached to this place as their homeland. Both people. And as we said before, nobody is going to give up and to leave this place. So first of all, we emphasize that there is a need to start speaking about sharing this homeland and not struggling who had the right to claim it as a homeland or who has been there historically before the other. Second, if we want to live in this shared homeland, we have to agree to live there according to equality, to the principle and the value of equality, both individual and collective equality. And accordingly, the third principle is the right of self-determination for both people, both groups, in 2 sovereign, independent, modern states. The fourth principle is recognition. It's not enough to agree about sharing the same homeland and having self-determination and equality. We need also to have a kind of transformative national collective awareness of both people to be able to recognize the traumatic history and suffering of the Jewish people before the establishment of the State of Israel, and how this collective memory and suffering shape the individual and the collective identity of the Jewish people and the Jewish Israelis especially. And we need also to acknowledge the ongoing suffering and trauma, collective trauma, of the Palestinian people since the Nakba and what came after the Nakba, which is still exists until today, now, at these moments where we are speaking. We need to acknowledge that, and then, and here our fifth principle, to be able to reconcile, not only to speak about peace and peace agreement and principles or kind of practical regulations how we can live together. There is a need for something much more emotional, cognitive, in the short term as well as in the long term, in order to maintain any solution that we agree about for the long term and for the future and for the coming generations.
Thank you very much. And I think, these 5 principles to me sound very, I don't want to say basic, but like there's something that it's hard to imagine disagreeing with, right? And also I think depending on what moment we're in, the relevance of each of them sort of rises. And I told you the other day, when I first heard these 5 principles, the 4th one about recognition of historic trauma of both peoples seemed the most sort of abstract. And now it seems by far the most concrete to me in this moment, just 6 months later. So with a deep breath, I want to ask now, how? I mean, it sounds good. What does that look like? What do these 5 principles look like in terms of practical solutions? And I want to say before you explain that the whole point of this is a new political vision, a new political imagination. So some of what it looks like is going to sound different than the ways we're used to thinking about these things. That's okay. That's the whole point. We're going to take a deep breath, absorb a bunch of new ideas, and then ask some questions about them. They won't sound like the ideas we were raised on. It's okay, right?
I mean, if we think that the ideas we were raised on are going to work, then good luck. Okay, so I will try to translate the principles that Rula laid out, and I think that just for the record of the story, A Land for All starts, or 2 states, 1 homeland. We start with those principles, and then in general we say whatever solution you can come up with that honors these principles, we're game. And we always say that 1 state, 2 state, 15 states, we have an idea of how to translate this into something that can work. And that's what we're here to offer you. And I will try to do that best I can. And then maybe I'll talk about the paradigm shift after. Okay, so you know what? Let's start with the paradigm shift. Let's build some more tension and also hopefully get you thinking together with us. We are offering a new solution that is based on a new balance between a certain amount of political separation and a certain amount of needed integration and cooperation. And what we are saying is that number 1, and I think this is actually very clear to Americans in a way that is not so much to Israelis sometimes, segregation does not work. We all agree on that, right? Okay, segregation does not work. It is immoral, even when it's, pretending to be something else. It is immoral, and it's just not sustainable. And for very long, we have been in this fantasy that we can segregate Israelis and Palestinians, but guess what? We just can't. We just can't. At this point of time, and this is what has led us to do this work, Israelis and Palestinians are interdependent in such a way that trying to separate us is just impossible. It's also going to take us backwards instead of forward to any sustainable future. And so what we're here to, so I'm leading us towards the what, but I want to start with saying that the paradigm shift is moving away from segregation to partnership, to the mechanism of partnership. And as you heard, Two States, One Homeland, a Land for All is a shared, joint, cross-border organization of Israelis and Palestinians who have co-created this idea. And the mechanism of partnership is the way to ensure that this is relevant, that this is accepted, and that it will work. Because having the compass of justice and equality, if I hold that exclusively right now, and that's what's happening, right? Israel's in charge of the entire homeland, right? And we are the most moral army in the world. Okay? Said, nagid. tzorech ha'inyan. This is, I will never be able to say what justice and equality looks like for Palestinians. Not because I'm a bad person, just because it's impossible, because I'm a Jewish Israeli. So the mechanism of doing this work together, the acknowledgement that we cannot segregate and that we have to think about these things together, the understanding that no one is going anywhere, and the component that Rula has been touching on of the attachment of both people to the entire homeland. And we always give this funny example of, and you know this, that both Jews and Palestinians have been wearing the same chain. I've been saying this so much in the past 2 weeks, so I hope it's still funny for you guys. Same chain with the same map on the necklace. And it's probably manufactured in the same factory in China. And one says Israel, and one says Palestine. And when Rula wears it, she's an anti-Semite. And when I wear it, I'm a fascist. But at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, for Palestinians, Palestine is Yafo and Aqqa and Ramle and Lod and Ramallah and Jerusalem and Gaza. You cannot tell anyone that that is not Palestine. And just to push on that, if you remember the events of May 2021, what happens and starts in Al-Aqsa will get to Haifa and to Yafo. It will. Believe us. You can build a huge wall. It will still get there. And ma la'asot, this is difficult for me to say as an anti-occupation, activist for a long time now, that for most Jews, Hebron is very important. And the fact that we have neglected giving a good answer to this attachment that has been running the show, and we have thought that we can disregard it, has not led us to any sustainable solution. So we have to address that. Okay. Now I will share the political program, and then I'll say a few words about reality, because I think that's also important, moving between vision and just being very practical and realistic. So Two States, One Homeland, and you can hear that it already kind of breaks the classic binary and zero-sum game, right? Like, yes, two states, but one homeland, is offering two independent, sovereign, democratic states, Israel and Palestine. A lot of people have, I'm saying it again, because a lot of people have then after in the Q&A have said, like, but you're a one-state solution. Two-state solution, two states, Israel and Palestine, 97 borders, different parliaments, different legal systems, different armies, okay, two states. So we all know this. This is the simple part. What does one homeland mean? It means that we are aspiring for a gradual reality of freedom of movement within the homeland, and gradually, and I encourage you all to expand your Jewish muscle of political imagination that we were really good at once and we really suck at it right now, and think about the EU. Gradual freedom of movement and freedom of residency in the homeland, so that we can actually exercise this attachment. The third component is what we call a superstructure or shared institutions that will take care of the things that have to be shared. And this has been the tradition since Oslo, right? Water. The Shared Committee for Water has been around from the 90s. You cannot deal with water in the most vulnerable climate change area separately. Because water knows no borders. Because you can't fight climate change separately, because it's just not going to work. Because if you think about the sewage in Gaza right now running to the Mediterranean Sea, and after 36 hours getting to the shore of Tel Aviv, and then the shore in Tel Aviv is closed and no one knows why. Well, this is why. Because yesterday the first IDF soldier, and unfortunately probably not the last, died because of a bacteria coming from the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And the fact that, at least for now, we don't know if other Israelis who are not IDF soldiers have caught that bacteria is no less than a miracle. But we've been through COVID. COVID does not stop at the checkpoint. You cannot tackle healthcare separately at this point. Never mind. because the amount of interdependency at this point is so robust that it's just backwards to think that higher walls will give us that safety. So I'll just say one more thing, which I think is two more things. One is that on October 7th, we have seen the worst outburst of this fake status quo. We knew it's not sustainable. We never imagined it would be so horrific. And where we saw it play out was very surprising, because we expected it to come from the West Bank. But it came from the place with a $1 billion wall, with 16 years of siege, and with the biggest amount of segregation, as opposed to 2 million Palestinians who are the families of the folks in Gaza, brothers and sisters and cousins of the people in Gaza who live inside of Israel. It's the same Palestinians. So how come now people are telling me that bigger walls and more walls will give me safety? How does that work? And I'll just push on that just a little more, and then I'll say, just to try to summarize the vision, and say that for those of you who are knowledgeable about Israeli security, you know that in the past 20 years, the security and safety of Israelis, because Palestinians do not have safety and security, and it's time that when we talk about safety and security, we talk about safety and security for both people. We have had safety and security because of very tight collaboration between the IDF and the PA, not because of the separation barrier. So I hope I've been able to push you beyond the paradigm of segregation and explain why the paradigm of partnership or very tight collaboration to the least is the only way pragmatically and practically to deal with reality today. So this offer, this advanced two-state solution that acknowledges the attachment, that thinks through reality, that thinks about pragmatic ways to deal with the difficulties and learning from other conflicts, also gives some serious answers to historic deadlocks of the classic two states. Water, Jerusalem, right of return for Palestinian refugees, a critical issue that without addressing, we will just not solve anything. And in our model, we differentiate between citizenship and residency, meaning that Palestinian refugees would be able to return to Palestine as citizens, and then a certain amount of them would be able to become permanent residents in Israel with safety and security measures and everything we need, but return to their homeland. And think about French and Germans, right? It's not that crazy. It'll take 80 years, that's okay, we have time. And then the last component is settlers, which is a really difficult thing to talk about, but it's real. And in our program, settlers who accept the sovereignty of the Palestinian state with no system of oppression, no system of supremacy, no privileges, private land goes back to private owners, they will be able, some of them, to live in Palestine as permanent residents of Palestine, but as citizens of Israel. And so these shared institutions, like a human rights court, like a justice court, like water, like climate, like certain issues of economy, of shared institutions, Israelis and Palestinians, will be the insurance of this infrastructure. So 2 states, 1 homeland, and shared institutions.
Thank you. I want to take some questions, but before people raise hands, let's everybody on their own time take a deep breath. It was a lot of information, a lot of new ideas. One of the things that I resonate so much with about this is the content and form matching. So the process is the product and vice versa. It's a shared organization coming up with shared solutions, and the solutions are about partnership as well. So thank you for laying that all out. Let's take questions 3 at a time. Or we'll start this way, and Ruli will help identify who's going to ask.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I got to say, I disagree with a lot of what you said, but a lot to unpack, but I can't do that way. But I'm going to ask a question this way. In this synagogue here, a number of years ago, we had a speaker here who you may be familiar with. His name is Tal Becker. He was a negotiator for Israel's government. And he said when he was negotiating with a Palestinian for the first time, they sat down, and the Palestinian said to him, I just want to let you know before we start our negotiation that I would be willing to go completely blind, if I can make you blind in one eye. What that means is, basically he's saying is that I hate you more than I love myself. So at the end of the lecture, I asked Mr. Becker, how many people in what I call Judea and Samaria you would call Palestine or the occupied territories? I won't get into that right now. But how many people, how many of those Palestinians believe the same way he does? He said, we figure about 30%. So we figure about 2.5 million people live in Judea and Samaria. That's about 800,000 people who hate Jews more than they love themselves. Okay? People like that you can't negotiate with. Sadly, you must remove them or kill them or something like that because they're a danger to yourself.
Respectfully, let's get to the question.
Okay,
part,
the
please.
question
Thank
is,
you.
how can you then say, if these people hate Jews more than they love themselves, how can you have peace with them and have a 2-state solution with them?
Thank you. Let's take another 2 questions or so, and then we'll answer together. Congressman, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very nice vision. But how do you get from here to there? How do you get from an Israel governed by I call it a fascist government, that says there can be no 2-state solution, there must only be for Israeli security, Israeli dominance over the entire area? How do you get from there to what you're talking about?
Thank you. How about we start with those and take it, or you want to take another one? All right, one more over there. Great.
Hi, thank you so much for the important commentary. I just want to talk a little bit more about the day after and what needs to happen. So there's talk about getting rid of Hamas, and it seems to me that Hamas is more of an idea, given Hamas isn't the only one that exhibits that rhetoric towards Israel, and I'm afraid that a lot of the rhetoric coming out of Israel is very similar to the war on terror rhetoric that happened post 9/11. And what I'm worried about is, when do we actually get rid of Hamas? Because I don't think the idea ends after they're gotten rid of physically. And so what does the end of Hamas ultimately mean to you guys?
These sort of feel like part of a whole. Yeah. Please.
I will start with your question about how we get there. Okay. Usually, yeah, imkva.
I,
Nice
for one,
music.
don't mind a music interlude.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Some break.
Can we? Thank you. Great.
We have learned from our history that, and from other people's history, of conflict, of political transformation and mobilization, that we need a decision. We need leaders, political leadership. We need vision, and we need hope. We provide the last two elements, vision and hope. But we need, on both sides, as well as here in the States, the right political leadership who are able to take decision, to start this shift and to decide that we can have another way of life and another reality for both people in Israel-Palestine. So this is actually the key, decision and political leadership. And we are very aware of the fact that we don't have at this moment the right political leadership. But we do believe that in the coming months, we do believe in this year, 2024, we are going to witness internal political transformation in Israel and in Palestine, and we will have, and we will also encourage and ensure having the right political leaders who would be able to make this decision.
You want to address some of the other questions?
Yes, I'll start with what Rula says, and I think this connects to, again, what I started with, talking about the 9 months prior to October 7th. What we're here to say, there are a lot of parts to this puzzle. We don't have all the answers. And what we have not had in 20 years is a political vision that will give A, hope, B, realistic horizon, and C, a commitment to an end game. This is a lesson we learned from Oslo. Saying that we will now go on a roadmap or in a gradual process to maybe, no. You need an end game. Otherwise, you're never going to build trust. You're never going to give the people something to fight for. And you're definitely not going to get the Palestinian on board. They've had enough of that. So for us, what we are bringing to the table is, and I think this goes to the Hamas question and also to your question, which is Israel's government has made, and this is, their statement, has made Hamas a strategic partner in order not to go on a political realm, not to negotiate, not to have an agreement. This has blown in their face. The only way to defeat Hamas, not as an idea, but also the resistance, right? What's the resistance? Is a Palestinian sovereign independent state. That's the way. That is the way. With, alongside an Israeli democratic state with a peace agreement. In 73, do you think anyone imagined that there will be peace with Egypt? You know that they didn't. You know they didn't. But what we did as Israelis to ensure our safety is a peace agreement. That is the new story. That is the new story. That is how you fight Hamas. You have an end game and you commit to it, and you don't let radicals like after Oslo take you other ways. You commit to an end game. You have an end game that articulates hope and vision that people can start organizing around, and you make this the new common sense. This should be the new common sense. This, first of all, because nothing else makes sense. It doesn't. But also because we need to start pushing for a new story, a new common sense. And we've just learned that in Northern Ireland, a year before the Good Friday Agreement, there was a whole coalition and a huge campaign pushing these ideas for the Good Friday Agreement, so that when the political opportunity really came around, and it will not be with this government, right? Number one, get rid of Netanyahu. And I'm not even talking about Smotrich and Ben Gvir and those. But you know what they have and we don't? Political vision and political imagination. So we get rid of them, but we also start creating this new conversation and discourse, and they called it the megaphone effect, of everyone talking about the agreement, so that when it comes, people are ready. Because now people are not ready. People are not ready. Don't listen to Israelis. Don't listen to the Poles. We're all crazy. Don't listen to Israelis. We're crazy right now. No, I'm not kidding. Listen to us, but don't listen to Israelis. But it's not a joke. Please don't think that the mentality and the political analysis of Israelis or Palestinians right now is an indicator of what can happen in 5 years. It never is. Do you think anyone imagined the EU or the Berlin Wall falling or Northern Ireland having an open border with Ireland? No. This is time to be brave and have a vision that can actually work and that gives hope to people, because that will allow for social change and political change in Israel to actually happen, and in Palestine, and maybe in the US.
Amen. Let's take a few more questions. Roli, Jenny, are you going to call on people? Great. My former madricha should be first over here. Jordan.
Protexia. Thank you so much for having this vision, for sharing this vision, and for the resilience that it takes to weather so many storms. And that's kind of where I'm going with this, which is my question is twofold connected. One is the paradigm shift that you're talking about, which is a new common sense, a new way of envisioning two nations, one homeland, shared infrastructure and common goals, is so brilliant and so foreign to people. And you're right that right now people are so reactionary and so triggered that they're not able to share that vision with you as common sense as it is. So my question is how to make that paradigm shift of thinking, and globally in our communities, and then also how do we, the people in this room, the people that we share this with, hopefully it reverberates outside this room, how do we contribute to what you're talking about?
We'll take a few more.
I'd just like to echo thanks again for coming and sharing your ideas. Dr. Rula, you kind of opened tonight by speaking about your existential fear for your family, your community. To what extent do you think the Palestinian political leadership and populace appreciate the existential fear of Israelis and Jews, given the 3 major wars to ostensibly eradicate the state, the Holocaust, pogroms, and then functionally, what do you think the Palestinian political leadership and general populace can do to build trust that Israelis will accept a militarized sovereign state in a geographic position where functionally, Jersey City could launch a war on New York City?
What role do you think the U.S. government could play? That is, Biden, Senator Schumer, and Congressman Nadler, who I know is here. What do you think they could do that could help this along?
Okay. Light.
Okay, I will start with your question very, very briefly because I think we talked about that. First of all, you should be convinced that both people are not going to leave. Both people are not going to give up. And you know what? Since I'm speaking to Jewish people, the Palestinian people are not going to give up. They will keep struggle in different ways. And if you go back to the history of the Palestinian national movement, they kept struggling since 48 in different ways, okay? In violent ways, and less violent, and non-violent. So if we can there, in Israel-Palestine, live together, and we had very good years also living together without violence and without escalation. So we are able to continue also living together. We need this paradigm shift that we are speaking about to start sharing the homeland and to be reconciled and to recognize each other needs and desires and fears and history, etc. And you know what? Even when you speak to people, just encourage them to go out from this binary way of thinking to be pro-Israelis and or pro-Palestinians. Be pro all people there. So, to your question about the existential fears of the Jewish people and the Jewish Israeli people, I started speaking about transformative national collective awareness of both sides in order to acknowledge all of this. I know that it's not an easy conversation for the Palestinian people, and I'm not sure that all Palestinian people at this moment are able to think about the fears of the Jewish Israelis and the whole traumatic history and collective memory of the Jewish people. Because of the most present moment that they live actually under real existential fear now, and because of the ongoing military control and negation of their right to exist in Israel-Palestine, and because of the very violent practices of the Israeli government and the IDF toward the majority of the Palestinian people during the majority of the years since 48 until now. So it's it is difficult to imagine that the victim and the oppressed is able to think about the other. But we know from other experiences in the world that it is doable. And more than that, if I just focus on the Palestinian people, we had experienced better phases. If you remember the 90s and until the break of the second Intifada, and even before that, before the first Intifada in 87, people were able to live together and to move much more freely and to think about better future, even without, you know, great deep discussions about the fears and the collective memory of the Jewish people. I think that it is something that need to start be in discussion and on the public agenda of the Jewish Israelis as well as the Palestinians. And even without doing that, you know, when I returned back after 10 years in Germany, I decided to live in Jerusalem, Ramallah, and to work in Palestinian universities. And I experienced what it means to live under occupation and under military control and to be denied your most basic rights. And you know what? I don't claim even to know it in depth, because even though I live in Ramallah, I still a privileged Palestinian, because I do have the Israeli citizenship and I can move freely and, you know, practice my freedom and my rights differently. But knowing these people from very close relationship for many years, I do guarantee you that the majority of the Palestinian people just tired from this situation, and they just want like any other people in the world. And you know what? Especially the young people. They just want to live. They want to dream and to study and to travel and to smoke hash. And you know, they are like any normal other people. Do you think that the Palestinian people are happy to be in this situation? No. The answer is no. And that they are willing, and they started actually, if you remember, the Oslo Accords, to accept 22% of the historic Palestine as their own state. It's already a compromise. And we are not offering them much more, you know, also now.
Okay, I want to talk about what we can do, but I will start by repeating something that we already said and that connects to some of the questions about trust, etc. We need to stop the war.
Applause, cue applause.
This war is not giving safety to Israel. I don't know if you've noticed. There's no strategy for it. And much worse than that, right? Not even going to start talking about the atrocities or of the strategic liability continuing this war is. Because if we don't stop it, except for the moral, you know, obvious reasons that this war needs to end, think about the hostages, think about the West Bank, think about Lebanon. The entire Middle East can blow up, and we're still continuing. Egypt, Jordan, I mean, I can go on with the threats, right? This war needs to end for all the reasons that you know. It has to end together with a political process, with an end game. And you have to connect the two. There's no day after and ceasefire. Stop disconnecting the things. Stop thinking about segregation. Stop disconnecting Gaza from the West Bank. We have to end the war, bring back the hostages, those who are alive. And we have to commit immediately to a political process that will bring peace and a Palestinian sovereign independent state. That is what we should, only then will we be able to create political change and create trust. So that's what we can do, that's what we should, what else can we do? We talked about the megaphone effect. Please, everyone should know about this idea. This should become the new common sense. Write about it, blog about it, TikTok about it. Is that how you say? I feel so old. Post about it, podcast about it, write about it to your newspaper, tell about it to your leaders, tell about it to your congregants, to your kids, to your friends, to your colleagues. Everyone needs to know that Israelis and Palestinians are doing this work. We've been doing it for 12 years. We're ready. Thousands of people have joined this movement in the past 4 months. The ecosystem is growing and strengthening, and organizations are adopting this language because 4 months ago people thought the political vision is not something we have to deal with, and now they know we do. And so this language has been becoming, in a sense, something that a lot of organizations have been using. Let's do that. Let's do that. And the other thing, and we need your support. We need financial support because we are working 400%, and we will continue doing that. But we can do this 15 times more easily if we have support. And so it's a very, make this a choice. Make a choice for life and not for death, and choose to uplift a vision that can get us out of this shit. Yeah, and I want to say one more thing. We had a panel, and Libby, you were there, with Yossi Beilin in the summer. And when this was a very classic progressive two-state solution crowd, I would say. Yeah, some people are laughing, yes. But Yossi said, are you all supporters of the two-state solution? And people were like, yes, of course. Great, tell me how. Because if you continue saying two-state solution and meaning nothing, and nothing is a nice way to say fig leaf, to do absolutely nothing, which is of course not nothing, because the fake status quo has led us to this point, you are part of the problem. So we all have to recommit to make this a reality. And we do not have the luxury of not doing anything. We do not. This is a historic moment. So please, we are doing the work on the ground. Trust us. We are organizing, we're demonstrating, we're bringing the vision to the young folks, we're talking to the leaders, we're doing the work on the ground. And now we have to do it 15 times more, and you all need to be a part of it, and everyone needs to know about this. So this is what we can do.
Thank you very much. Before I thank our speakers and before I hand the microphone back to Rabbi Roli, because this is the last event of this massive speaking tour, I wanted to just pause for a minute and say that speaking tours like this take a lot of work, and most of it is invisible. And we worked with a really wonderful team to put this last 2 weeks together, led by the one and only Johnny Jacoby, who's here tonight. We're all kind of like living in Johnny's world, but also included Ron Skolnick and David Bubis in LA, and Aaron Back, who's on the live stream, Tamara Gayer, and the Israelis for Peace, who accompanied them, made sure they got everywhere they needed to go, had food and water. From my team on the NIF side, Itamar Wigoder, for tonight, Jenny Levy and Zach Whitus. What's up, New Gen? Mai was New Gen director in San Francisco, so you guys get a shout out. And so it doesn't just happen, it's a lot of work, and you guys were on the road and really speaking every day and meetings from morning till night, but there was a group behind the scenes making it all happen. And so a big thank you, and a big thank you to Americans for A Land for All for the support, which Roli is a part of. And also big thank you to, I see a lot of New Israel Fund people in the crowd. I always do a shout out to board members and past, present staff, Thank you all for coming. Thank you for an incredible conversation. And thank you, Roli, and the amazing team here at BJ for always hosting us so graciously.
Thank you, thank you. Just want to say thank you, Libby and Maya and Rula. Thank you all for coming. I hope you can, as they said before, take a deep breath and let this sit and try to stretch your imagination, because we can't stay where we are. We can't stay where we are. We have to figure something out of this labyrinth or this maze that is getting us not only nowhere, it's getting us to really, really bad places. So that's the request. And the other thing I want to say is it takes a lot of courage to be upfront, propagating and thinking and envisioning and spreading these ideas. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength when everything else is pulling to despair. So I just want to commend you on this, on your strength and your courage. And I think, I don't know if you've noticed, there is an intensity here, expressed very differently. Rula and Mai expressed this intensity very, and this urgency, very differently. But there is an urgency, and they come from a place which is broken on both sides. And you can hear this plea for us to step up and support them and hopefully walk on a new path, hopefully soon. Last thing, you have there is a brochure. Like, hold this for me. There's a little thing inside. You have two things. One looks like this, and the other one looks like this. So please take one if you don't have one. It has a QR code. So you know how it works. Please go into the QR code, support, donate, share. You know what to do. Thank you so much for coming. Laila Tov.